Hello Animals fans and welcome back to AniLysis. We're looking at the Skunk Kits, who come in this book, Book 9, The Secret. And I do believe they play a very important role in introducing Cassie to the series. It takes up till Book 9, yes, for Cassie's character to really come to life in the Animorphs series. We're going to tackle the Skunk Kits in chronological order as it comes to the quotes, rather than looking at certain aspects first and then going back and looking at other stuff later. We're going to go bit by bit through Book 9 and analyse as we go along. So without further ado, let's look at our first quote. Just got a call from the highway patrol. They said this certain animal is out by the side of the highway where it cuts through the forest. They say this certain animal seems to have a bad burn. I didn't like the way he kept saying certain animal. We have to drive out and get it, my dad said. Then he grinned. Actually, I'll drive. You have to get it. I groaned. There was only one animal in all the world my dad was afraid of. He handled foxes and wolves and even bears, but he would not handle this certain animal. Are you telling me it's a skunk? I asked. He nodded. You have such a way with skunks. This is the context that we require where it all starts. So Cassie has arrived home and then she and her father go out because they get a call about a skunk that's been hurt at the side of the highway. Turns out it's the mother skunk, the mother to the Skunk Kits. And there's 5 skunks in this picture, from what I can tell. There's 4 there and there's a bunch of fur over here, which I imagine is another skunk. And that is relevant because there were 5 Skunk Kits. But we're getting ahead of ourselves. Let's look at the next quote where they found this skunk mother. And Cassie is led to believe that these Skunk Kits are out there in the woods alone. My dad glanced at me and smiled. It's mostly fur and skin that were burned. But I see some moderately severe damage in the shoulder here. Much deeper, and the spine would have been burned. But she'll live. I wish I could say as much for her kids. Her what? She has babies? Yeah, I'd say probably about 6, 7 weeks old. She has babies? Out there somewhere in the woods? My dad started applying a new bandage. Cassie, you know nature plays rough. But they're too young to survive on their own, aren't they? I can't be sure, he said, not looking at me. It occurred to me that sometimes maybe he lied to me too, for my own good, or because of what he thought was my own good. They're sitting out in some den wondering where their mother is, I said. They'll starve to death, or be eaten by predators. Cassie now is pretty certain that these Skunk Kits exist, but she doesn't know where they are yet. Now, in the midst of all this, the Animorphs are going after Dapson Lumber, which is a lumber company owned by the Yerks, operated by the Yerks. Christ, look at my hair. Oh, sorry. Just worrying about the progress of time and its effects on the mortal human body. I need to start wearing a hat in these videos. just cover the aging. Hold on. Maybe I can find a skunk somewhere. Even that would be worth it. I'll put a skunk on my head. There we go. It's not quite sensible. Do you remember back in the earliest videos I did, I used to put random hats on? I'm starting to realise why I did it. There we go. I'm not going to worry about my balding head anymore. So where were we? It is a bit silly, really, isn't it? When it's largely a serious video. I like the irony. We'll continue. The Dapson Lumber Company is wiping out this woodland to search for the Andalite bandits, which is obviously going to put these animals in danger. And what Cassie believes is the cause of this skunk receiving a Dracon beam burn. So it's all coming together. But eventually the animals decide to go out to carry out the mission regarding Dapson Lumber, and Cassie decides she's going to take the opportunity to try to find the Skunk Kits. Owl was a good choice for what I had in mind. Owls are the only natural predators of adult skunks. See, some species of owls don't have a sense of smell. If you're going to eat skunks, that's a good thing. I wasn't going to eat adult skunks, of course. I was going to try to find some skunk babies. As we flew to what might be our destruction, I tried to focus on my other goal, listening for the cries of Skunk Kits, watching the ground below for the waddling, shuffling walk of a lost baby skunk. Almost there, Jake said. Another couple of minutes. Then, a noise. A noise against a background of noises. But this noise was one that the owl's brain wanted to hear. A noise the owl's brain had evolved to notice. The sound of helplessness. The sound of a weak creature. Weak, tiny, helpless babies. There! It was coming from a hole that no other animal would have seen in the pitch black of night. A hole dug beneath the roots of a thorn bush. 5 separate voices. Were they the Skunk Kits? Maybe. I couldn't be sure. But it was night, and it sounded like they were alone. It could be. I looked around, swiveling my owl's neck. I tried to form a picture of the place. The trees. The outcropping of rocks just 20 feet away. I wanted to be able to find the place again. If I was still around to find anything. The mewling sound of the babies reached something inside me. Inside the human Cassie. But to the owl, it was the sound of a meal. It's strange to have those two feelings in your head at the same time. Human compassion and the cold ruthlessness of the predator. Strange. So using her owl morph, she's able to locate the 5 Skunk Kits. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And after this mission, at the Dapson Lumber, they retreat, having morphed termite and gone through a rather unusual situation whereby Cassie ends up killing the queen termite in order to save herself, effectively wiping out the colony. This makes Cassie feel strange because she knows that they're basically just termites, but she still feels guilty, upset about what she did, and she starts to question her actions. And this is actually very important going forward. I've just finished listening to the audiobook of Megamorphs 2, which plays on this theme as well. The idea of self-preservation. And it's one that Cassie has to deal with. And this comes into play with these Skunk Kits here. This is why I say that this is the first book where we're introduced to Cassie's character. Because in book 4, we don't get any of this. It's just finding Axe. This is where Cassie really gets introduced. Anyway, she's feeling guilty about this and she's talking to Tobias about it. And this is where she decides to go find these Skunk Kits finally. You feel bad because you had to kill the queen in order to survive. I shouldn't have been there. It's their world, not mine. Those little tunnels and a rotten piece of wood, that's their whole universe. I invaded it. And when they got in my way, I reacted. Who does that remind you of? Look, you're not a Yerk, and termites are not human beings, Tobias said. There's no comparison. I didn't bother arguing. Look, I have to morph. There's something I need to do. What? I sighed. It's something stupid, all right. There's this mother skunk we have who's injured. She has a litter of kits who are going to die. I think I know where they are, more or less, but I can't get there walking like a human. For a moment, Tobias said nothing. Skunk Kits? Near the edge of the Yerk logging compound? Yes. I can show you where they are. For a frozen moment of time, I refused to understand what he had just said. I didn't want to think of why Tobias, why a red-tailed hawk would know the exact location of a litter of skunk babies. I took a couple of deep breaths. I tried to keep my voice level. Are they still alive? There are 4 still alive, Tobias said. I felt an emotion I don't feel very often. I felt it boiling up inside me. I glared furiously at him, at the ripping talons, at the nastily curved beak. I could picture the scene in my mind, the way he would have swooped down, raked those talons forward, snatched the defenseless kit off the ground, and I was shaking. I laced my fingers together, just to stop them from trembling. I'm going to save what's left of them, I said. My voice didn't sound like my voice. I'll help you, Tobias said. I used my osprey morph and flew behind Tobias as he led me directly to the spot I had seen the night before. I carried the frozen grasshopper in my talons. I didn't ask Tobias any questions, and he didn't say anything. He pointed out the almost invisible entrance to the skunk's lair, and then he flew away. I knew he'd go to Jake and tell him what I was doing, and I knew that I'd hurt Tobias by treating him so coldly. But, to tell you the truth, I didn't care right then. I just wanted to find those baby skunks. I don't know why, but somehow in my mind those baby skunks had become very important. When Tobias was out of sight, I began to morph. So Cassie has found the skunk kit. She's brought a frozen grasshopper. So she's obviously taken it from the freezer in her barn, the one where she'll end up keeping the Escafil device in, I'm sure, but whatever. Just a random tangent, I'm sorry. It's because I'm wearing the silly hat. I say silly things. Silly, silly, silly. Would you rather see my balding? Would you rather see that? Honestly, I will leave it to you. Would you prefer me to wear hats, even if it's something not quite as silly as this? Or would you rather be exposed to the shine that will... sod aging. They do say, though, that testosterone makes you bald, which means I've got tons of it. But yeah, she's gone to the woods, found Tobias, and she's got this grasshopper, and she says to him, right, actually, I'm doing this. And he flies her there, knowing where they are because he's eaten this one, the one whose face you can't see. You notice that, if you can't see something's face, you relate to it less. So we're going to say that that's the one that died, the one that's... I don't even know how it's standing. It's like stormtroopers in Star Wars. It's easier to see them getting killed all the time because you can't see their faces. It's less personal, you see. Anyway, she morphs skunk and stays with these skunk kits. It's going to get her in trouble, I'm sure. I could hear the mewing sounds of the skunk kits within the burrow. I waddled over to the opening and pushed my head inside. It was dark, but I could make out 4 of them. Tiny, helpless little things. No longer infants, but not yet able to defend themselves or hunt like skunks. I know some people think animals don't have emotions, but those kits were happy to see me, and something in the mind of the skunk was relieved and joyful to see them. I retrieved the frozen grasshopper, now completely thawed. I crawled inside that little hole in the dirt. I curled around and the kits nuzzled up against me. I fed them the grasshopper. I knew I only had 2 hours in morph. But even though I'd just gotten up a few hours earlier, I suddenly felt sleepy. The meal was done. The kits wouldn't starve, and I was sleepy and very, very peaceful. Even in my sleep, I knew what was happening to me. See, I'd always loved animals. Always. But now, I think I was falling out of love. Nature wasn't all cute and fuzzy. The strong ate the weak ate the weaker. It's what the Yerks were doing, trying to make prey out of the ultimate predator, Homo sapiens. Cassie goes in as the mother skunk, and we will cover the skunk morph in a later AniLysis, so we're not going to worry about that now. We're just worrying about the skunk kits. So she goes in as the mother skunk into this little skunk lair and feeds them the grasshopper and then proceeds to fall asleep. And we all know that Tobias is a bit of a narc. We've experienced this before. So obviously the first thing he does is goes and yaps and says, look everyone, look what Cassie's doing. He's a little bastard, but it actually is helpful this time. So well done, Tobias. Your I'm telling mum attitude is paid off here because the animals arrive seemingly just in time. But Jake ain't very happy. Hey, are you in there? Cassie? I woke up. Where was I? It was dark. Was I in my bedroom? Was I... Oh, no. Was I in the termite colony? The 4 kits still slept, curled up against me. I was in the skunk's den. What? I said. It's me, Jake. Cassie, get out of there. Now. You've been in more for almost 2 hours. That woke me all the way up. I shot out of the burrow and instantly began to demorph. This is not why we have this ability. We are not trying to save every lost skunk in the world, Jake ranted. We are an army. A small, weak, pathetic, outnumbered army. We have exactly 6 members. Tobias has already been trapped in Morph, but he was trapped fighting the Yerks. I can't believe you would nearly get yourself trapped in Morph over some skunks. I do actually find this bit quite funny, because we find out in book 43 that Tobias didn't accidentally get trapped in Morph fighting the Yerks. He deliberately trapped himself in Morph just because, well, we'll get onto that in a future analysis or theory. But yeah, I do find that a bit funny. Tobias obviously doesn't say anything, Jake. But anyway, he lays into Cassie. But as we know with Jake, he's very liable to relenting to Cassie's whim. We see it later on down the line, but this is the first time we really see it here, because he eventually decides, okay, we'll do the thing that you want to do, Cassie. Jake, my dad will have the skunk mother ready to be returned here in a day or so. I'm not going to just abandon these kits. He put his hands on his hips and glared at me. You can't stay in Morph that long, and you know it. I know, but I have to make sure no predators come around. I have to get them food, and I have to morph at least some of the time so they can imprint on their mother here in the wild. Look, I know it seems stupid to you and Marco and probably everyone, but I have to do this. I'll watch them, Tobias said. I'd forgotten how good hawk hearing is. Tobias will keep watch. We'll work something out, Jake said. We'll save the lousy skunks. After all, it's not like we have anything else to do, aside from saving the world. Thanks, Jake, I said. And sorry. I didn't mean to scare you. I'll be okay now, I think. He smiled his slow smile. I'll be okay too, Cassie, as long as you're around. From a little ways off to our left, I heard Marco make a loud gagging noise. It made me laugh. I must have been feeling better to be able to laugh. And so the Animorphs endeavour to protect the skunks, because what's happening in the background is Daps and Lumber obviously logging, and they're destroying this habitat. And so there's an immediate threat to these skunks, but also their mother's not there to help protect them. So the Animorphs deem themselves capable and, what's the word I'm looking for? They deem it their duty to help the Skunk Kits. And so this is them putting the plan into action. Well, this is more than slightly insane, Marco said. It was later that same day, Sunday evening. We were all gathered around the skunk's den. We're going to raise little stinky skunk babies. What's so insane about that? Rachel asked sharply. Good old Rachel. She thought it was ridiculous too. But she's my best friend, and she always backs me up. They're skunks, Marco said, looking from Rachel to Jake Tuax, like he was the only normal person in a mental ward. They're cute, Rachel said, glaring at Marco and generally looking like a girl who never used the word cute. Ah, I see. Cute. Well, that certainly explains everything. Jake cut in. Cassie can't take them to the clinic or they may get used to humans. They're young. They'll imprint. So we're taking care of these skunks until Mummy Skunk can come back from the hospital. Okay, while we're in school tomorrow and the next day, Axe and Tobias will protect the den. Axe will morph the mother skunk from time to time. Tobias will patrol from above. I'll bring Tobias frozen food so he doesn't have to hunt during that time. Then, after school and through the night, the rest of us will work shifts. I'll do most of the skunk morphing, but in between times we'll have to have Jake and Rachel and Marco to help keep up a patrol. So they're all on board to help these skunk kits. And it takes a few days and they carry on doing their job and doing a pretty darn good job of it as well. That's how it seems anyway. And they start to get attached to these skunk kits. And it is quite charming, honestly. Over the next 2 days, we protected and nurtured a foursome of baby skunks. And as impossible as it seems, it worked, more or less. Maybe I'm kidding myself, but I think the others started enjoying it too. Typically, it was Marco who decided, after his first shift guarding the skunks, that the kits needed names. Joey, Johnny, Marky and CJ, he announced, like it was obvious. The Ramones, the godfathers of punk rock. They would be honoured. The one with the white stripe that kind of goes off really wide, that's Joey. Now, Johnny, At first I was the only one to morph the skunk mother. Then Axe did it. Then the others, one by one. I almost felt jealous. Right after school, 3 days later, I went to the skunk burrow and found Tobias flying cover above the burrow. So the kits are all right? There are still 4 of them, if that's what you mean, Tobias answered. But they won't stay inside. They keep coming out and looking around, especially Marky. This isn't good, especially if they do it at night. I morphed into the skunk mother and crawled inside the den. Tobias was right. The kits were restless. They were growing fast, and they instinctively wanted to go out into the great big world beyond the burrow. I think I'm going to take them for a walk, I told Tobias. Yes, that's right. The skunk kits have names. So this is going to be the fun part. So we've got Joey, Johnny, CJ, and who was the other one? Marky. Joey, Johnny, CJ, and Marky of the Ramones, as Marco calls them, the godfathers of punk. So, that one's Joey. That's Johnny, CJ, and Marky. So who was the one who died? Dee Dee, one of the ex-members of the Ramones. I mean, they're all basically ex-members of the Ramones, I'm pretty sure, because most of them are dead now. But yeah, at the time, Dee Dee was an ex-member, so the dead skunk is called Dee Dee. Canon, the one that Tobias ate. And I'm actually quite shocked that the authors decided to use the Ramones as the Skunk Kits names, because like half the Ramones were like massive Republicans. And if you ever watch the authors' Twitter posts these days, they basically think Republicans are Hitler. So how dare you name these skunks after Nazis? But yeah, they all have names now, and they've all got their own little personalities. So Marky is getting all agitated. So Cassie says, right, I'm going to take them for a walk. And take them for a walk she does. Marky made a wild dash outside, and I had to scamper to catch up with him. As soon as I appeared, though, the kit went meekly to stand behind me. One by one, the other 3 babies came out, and to my amazement, they lined up like obedient first graders. Okay, I said. Although, of course, the kits couldn't understand me. Let's take a walk. I waddled slowly away, took about 10 steps, then turned to look back over my shoulder. The 4 of them were all lined up behind me. I was their mother, as far as they knew, and they were programmed to follow their mother. We walked that way for half an hour. We paused to sniff things from time to time, various animal scents mostly, and then I realised something. We weren't supposed to just be going for a stroll. The kids were hungry. I was their mother, and it was my job to provide for them. If I didn't teach them to catch bugs, they wouldn't survive. Skunks eat some plants, but they also eat crickets and mantises and grasshoppers and even shrews and mice. I stopped walking and looked back at my kits. 4 almost identical little balls of black and white fuzz. 4 curious little faces watching me, waiting to see what I was doing, eager to learn. I'd been feeding them thawed frozen grasshoppers and thawed mice I'd brought from the clinic, just as I'd been giving Tobias food since he was too busy to hunt properly. But these skunk kits couldn't be fed by humans all their lives. Suddenly, a crashing sound. Something rushing through the woods, careless, wild, noisy, and coming right toward us. A dog! Without even thinking, I turned my back to the dog. The kits were still lined up. They were watching me intently. It almost made me want to laugh, if I could have. It was a big moment for them. They were about to learn why no sensible animal picked on adult skunks. I had no experience in spraying, but the skunk mind within my own knew exactly what it had to do. I aimed. I looked over my shoulder to judge the distance. I targeted that dog's face, and I fired. The dog in question is Homer, Jake's dog, who for whatever reason, and this is the only time he ever does it, decides to go off in an Animorphs mission or planning thing and takes his dog with him. He never does it before, and he never does it since. It's just this one time he decides, right, Homer, you're an Animorph today, so you're coming with me. What? But anyway, this is a convenient opportunity, funnily enough, for Cassie to basically fart in Homer's face. and show the Skunk Kits how it's done. What a ridiculous... I love this book, but my God, is it also ridiculous at the same time. Anyway, Homer runs home, unattended, of course, and then the animals come along and say, well, what do you know? There's Cassie, who could have been killed by my dog. Why? Because I brought him to the woods for unknown reasons. Oh, look, next thing for the plot to happen. Suddenly, they figure out that Daps and Lumber are churning through the woods even before they've been granted permission, because that's part of the point of this book, is there's a commissioner who comes and has to give them permission, but the Yerks are already starting. They've started now, and they're heading toward the skunks. You wouldn't believe how fast those machines can rip through trees, Tobias said, obviously shaken up. They're cutting trees like a farmer cuts wheat. And we have one of your hours to help this commissioner, Axe said. Then he focused his 2 stalk eyes on the skunk burrow. The small ones are right in the path of the loggers, if Tobias is correct. I expected Marco to make some snide remark about how no one cared about the skunks at a time like this, but to my amazement he said, Hey, no one messes with the skunks. Those skunks are under official animals protection. He winked at me and gave me a mocking, clenched fist salute. Save the skunks! Earth sister! Marco is such a pain in the butt. But then, just when you think he's going to drive you crazy, he'll come through big time for you. The animals are about to set off for the final portion of this A-plot mission regarding Daps and Lumber in this book. But Cassie has a private talk with Tobias because she's got some concerns on her mind. Look, Tobias, this has been bothering me. And since, I want to get this off my chest. I'm sorry I got mad over you. I'm sorry I got mad at you over the skunk kit. You were just doing what you had to do, I said. I could live off food you guys brought me, Tobias said. I don't have to hunt. Okay, then why do you? I asked, just before my mouth mutated into a beak. Because I'm not just a human. I'm also a hawk. Hawks hunt live prey. Would it be better if I let you do my killing for me? Is it more moral if I eat a frozen mouse you get from some supplier? Look, Tobias, I know all about how nature works. I know about predators and prey. It's just confusing. I mean, where does right and wrong come into it? I don't know. I guess if I were running around killing animals I didn't intend to eat, that would be wrong. But hawks have a right to live, just as much as a mouse or a skunk. We're going to finish off the series of quotes before we actually get into the meat of this. Pun intended. Because he ate Dee Dee. Bastard, Tobias. That's why Dee Dee had to quit the Ramones, because you ate him, you bugger. Anyway, they finish the Daps and Lumber mission, and they reunite the skunk mother with her kits the next day. The next day, Jake, Marco, Rachel, Axe and I were able to bring the skunk mother back to her den. She waddled inside, and a few minutes later, waddled back out, followed by Joey, Johnny, Marky and CJ. They ignored the 4 humans in the Andalite completely. After all, Mother Skunk was back with her kits, and Mother Skunk wasn't afraid of anything. They grow up so fast, Rachel said, as they shuffled and snuffled and waddled past us in single file. I guess the real Mother Skunk will give them different names, Marco said. He was joking, I think. Well, anyway, the forest is safe for baby skunks now, Jake said. Jake had morphed a housefly to spy on Farron in the hospital. The commissioner was fine. The first thing he did when he regained full consciousness was make a phone call to say that he was voting against logging in the forest. Have a good life, little skunks, Marco said to the skunk family. Tiny, furry little masters of the forest. And that is the last we see of the Skunk Kits. And they waddle off with their mother, safe in the knowledge that the forest is no longer threatened by Daps and Lumber Company. But Cassie still has a lot in her mind, and she continues to talk about her experience and her ambivalence, her inner contradictions, her curiosity. I shrugged. Nothing makes sense to me. Tobias eats one of the skunk kits, then he helps save the rest. I kill the termite queen to save myself and my friends, then I feel bad about it. But when it comes down to it again, I went after Visser 3 without hesitation. One minute I was a rat being chased by guys with sticks. The next minute I'm bringing dead mice to Tobias, who's guarding skunks he normally would have tried to eat. Somehow, it's part of the same big system. How does it all make sense? Jake looked like he was sorry he started the conversation. Boy, Cassie, I don't know. Okay, just tell me this. Am I part of nature? So I should just live by the laws of nature? Kill to eat, kill or be killed? Or am I something different because I'm a human? Well, I guess you're both, Jake said at last. I mean, you are the person who got rid of the termite queen. You're also the person who went out of her way to save a bunch of skunks. Just like Tobias ate a skunk kit one day, then saved them the next. That's not much help, I said. That just means humans are kind of in between. Still partly wild animals doing whatever it takes to survive, and partly I don't know what. Maybe something more than other animals. Well, I know one thing. All the animals take care of themselves, but only one animal has the intelligence and the power to help save all the other species. I nodded. You're pretty smart sometimes, Jake, I said. Just sometimes. You're right. Only one animal can save all the other animals. Only humans can do that. Of course, we have to save ourselves first. I sighed. It's still too complicated. Complicated? It sure is, Cassie, my dear friend. Nature is pretty bloody complicated. It's also full of these moral grey areas. And just before we get into that, let me just cover a couple other bits where the skunk kits are mentioned later on in the series, or sort of hinted at somehow. Let's cover a couple of quotes and we'll just have a little fun with them, and then we'll get into the serious stuff. I might even take the hat off. I touched the seal, wet and firm and soft, like touching a fairy water balloon. Sorry, I said, for no good reason. Nothing we can do, Cassie said. She set the pup back down on the ice. He scooted to the water's edge and slid in, rejoining his or her brother or sister. They might make it, Rachel chattered. But Cassie shook her head. For some reason, she smiled sadly at Tobias. No, they won't make it. But they'll feed some orca or polar bear. And you can't go all mushy over these guys without realising that orca babies and polar bears have an equal right to live. Still, if we could, Tobias said. They were remembering the skunk litter we'd once saved. Tobias had eaten one of the skunk kits. Then he'd helped Cassie keep the rest alive. Nature, huh? Rachel said. Yeah, nature, he replied. Guess we better morph. So, as I raised my predatory gaze from Old Man Mouse and saw that the girl was getting ready to drink from the stream, I thought I'd better run them off. I didn't want to feel bad. I wanted to catch myself a nice plump skunk pup. I didn't want to mope, tortured by miserable, pointless longing. So those two end quotes are, just a bit of fun basically. So the first one, we're just remembering the skunk kits and thinking how they could have saved the seal pups, but they were doomed. But we'll get into that because it actually does matter a bit. And then the final one doesn't mention the skunk litter, the skunk kits, but it does make you wonder, doesn't it? Because Tobias is saying, I fancy a skunk kit right now. Yum, yum. Is he remembering Dee Dee? The Ramon he ate? And thinking, oh, that was good. I wish I could have another one of them. I'm just thinking, is that, that's him remembering the skunk kits and also thinking he'd fancy one again. Anyway, let's get into the meat of it, shall we? Off comes the hat. We're talking serious. Actually, no, keep it on. So this is where we truly see Cassie come into the fray, because we introduce this big bit of moral ambiguity, this moral grey area, and it's done really well. And that's why this book, The Secret, is so effective, and it's actually a really good book. The Dapson Lumber Company, the A-plot, is sort of secondary to the character development bit. And this is the same with quite a few books. I'm not going to pretend that I have all the answers to this one. I'm basically going to summarize the contradictions, and I'm going to let you take your own interpretations away, because that's the only real way to go about this. I believe it's about self-preservation. And this is why I mentioned Megamorphs 2 earlier, because there's the bit at the end of Megamorphs 2 where Tobias rigs the nuke so that the Makora can't save themselves and end up getting destroyed. Why do the Animorphs accept this outcome? Because they save themselves. That's all it comes down to. They say, right, if we don't do it, then we all die. And hence the human race might not exist. Why is that important? Because the Makora could go on to say, go on living, and they could cure cancer, and yeah, sure, humans might not exist, but there might be a much more altruistic race that develops rather than humans, who, as we know, are pretty damn rubbish at times. Look at Hitler. I mean, if the human race didn't exist, then Hitler wouldn't have existed. Or Stalin. Like Nazis and communists, they're human things. They're not good things. They're bad things. So why is it that the Animorphs said it's worth us taking out the Makora to preserve ourselves? Don't forget also that the Yeerks saw humans as class 5. The humans would have been a tremendously damaging thing to the galaxy if the Yeerks managed to take the Yeerks. Before that, they didn't have, I mean, they had the Hork-Bajir, but they had their restraints. So, in the grand scheme of the galaxy, from a purely unbiased point of view, what was the benefit of them saving humanity over the Makora? There wasn't. The whole point was self-preservation, and they made that pretty clear. That is the same thing here. Why is it that Tobias was able to kill a skunk kit, but then he was happy to protect the other skunks later on? He was happy to kill a skunk kit because it was self-preservation. It took priority over the skunk kits. But once he'd fulfilled that self-preservation, it allowed him room to protect the skunk kits, to take that moral step rather than self-preservation. There's a what's it called? Here it is, Maslow's hierarchy of needs. So here it is, Maslow's hierarchy of needs. It's something I learned about in school. So the base of the pyramid, physiological needs, breathing, food, water, shelter, clothing, sleep. And then that's the first priority. And then as you move up towards the top of the pyramid, that's where you get self-actualization, including morality, creativity, spontaneity, acceptance, experience, purpose, meaning, and inner potential. That's where protecting the skunk kits comes in. So the first thing you need to do is protect yourself before you can protect the others around you. That is the thing that I think Cassie is figuring out here. By the end, she's saying, why is it that I was happy to do this thing, but then I felt guilty about it? It's because you protected yourself, you fulfilled the bottom need, and so it let you concentrate on these needs, and because morality is up here, and you thought you'd done something immoral, it allowed you to feel guilty. But if you were to do it again, if you were back in that situation, you'd have no choice but to go for the physiological needs. That's what Cassie is struggling with here, the idea of Maslow's hierarchical needs thing. And it's exactly the same with Tobias and Megamorphs. He was put in danger himself and those closest to him, his safety. So his self-preservation came before his sense of morality. This is why bravery can be such a rare thing, and altruism. Because look at firefighters, for example. They learn to put their morality before their physiological needs. They will run into a burning building to save somebody else, or even a dog or something like that, a pet. They train themselves to put their self-actualization above their physiological needs. Some people learn it through childhood to be altruistic. And I've said this before, that I don't think there's anything such as true altruism. And this is sort of where I'm coming into it. There's levels of altruism, but I don't think there's such a thing as pure altruism. Because look at the example of the firefighter running into the building. Why is he doing that? Because he's trained his brain to think that doing that is for the good of society. And society is what humans need to remain safe. So there is still that level of self-preservation inherent. It's just been trained into the brain to tie into an altruistic motive, I think. I'm no psychologist or psychiatrist or whatever, so I'm just theorising. But yeah, I think this is what the Skunk Kits thing and the Termite Queen and the Megamorphs 2, I think it's all talking about this sort of thing. Maybe the authors weren't thinking, Maslow, but I think this is the source of that issue. And it's something we inherently know, inherently understand. This just puts it in a illustration form, so it's easier to understand. You can put a name to it. How does this play into Cassie's character going forward? Because as I say, this book is very important for Cassie's character. I think if we continue to look at Maslow's hierarchy, looking at Cassie's character going forward, and by the way, I will end up doing another Cassie AniLysis. I know I've done one before, but my AniLysis format has changed since then, so she's back on the list, and we will discuss that. But I think if we keep an eye, just keep it in the corner of our eyes, the Maslow's pyramid. Maslow, isn't that a character? What am I doing? It is Maslow. Isn't that one of the radio hosts from GTA? Anyway, we'll keep that in the back of our minds as we look more into Cassie's character, because I think she's a bit like the firefighter, who trains her brain to place morality at least at an equal footing to self-preservation. And I think that's very interesting, and partly why I really enjoy her character. Anyway, CJ, Joey, Johnny and Marky, the Skunk Kits. I think they were brilliant. And Dee Dee as well. Let's not forget Dee Dee. I thought they were only in one book and they were part of the B plot, but the B plot in that book actually, in the grand scheme of things, is far more important. And they were instrumental in bringing that B plot, in developing Cassie's character. They were a brilliant addition to the series, short-lived as they were. And I'm sure that after this, they went on to live fulfilling lives in the woodlands, growing up to be adult skunks and spraying golden retrievers in the face. Silly Homer. Yeah, great addition to the series. Fantastic book. Bit silly at times, but yeah. If it weren't for that, I think Cassie's character just wouldn't have really happened the way it did. So, well done. Thank you, Skunk Kits. What's going to be the next AniLysis on the old dinner plate? Now on the wheel of misfortune, we have added Megamorphs 2. So we've got everything up to and including Megamorphs 2 on the list. So we've now got things in there such as broccoli, the Triceratops, the Nesk Nuke. Let's see what comes up in the spin the wheel. Diddly 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 boo boo. What have we got? The waterfront. the waterfront, everybody. That's going to be fun, I suppose. Does anything even happen at the waterfront? We'll find out. We'll find out. Thank you very much for watching, and I shall see you next time, somewhere in the Animorphs universe. Ta-ra!